President Biden has unveiled a new executive order targeting Israeli settlers in the West Bank. It allows the U.S. to impose new sanctions on those who engage in violence against Palestinians or displace them from their homes. Israeli politicians and government officials could also be subjected to those same sanctions. This move comes as Biden faces mounting criticism over his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. CBS News chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins us now. Nancy, it's great to see you. Tell us about this executive order that has already penalized 4 individuals. Who are they, and should we expect the government to sanction Israeli officials as well?
There's certainly the possibility, Weija, that the number of sanctioned individuals could grow. Right now, it is 4 individuals, West Bank settlers, Israelis, who the White House accuses of behaving with violence towards Palestinians in the West Bank. One of them, for example, the administration says incited a riot, set vehicles and buildings on fire, and that it led to the death of 1 Palestinian. Another assaulted Palestinian farmers. Why is this important? Because the president has been making the case that a 2-state solution is really the only way to prevent violence and tension long-term between Israel and the Palestinians. That's been rejected by the Israeli prime minister. And the U.S. really wants to see the Israeli government crack down more than it has on these West Bank Israeli settlers who they feel have been targeting Palestinians. And so what this executive order does is it essentially freezes any U.S. assets that these individuals might have, and it prevents anyone in the U.S. essentially from doing business with them. And these 4 people are not, are not big fish. They're not necessarily high on the totem pole, but it's definitely meant to send a message that other individuals, perhaps higher-ranking individuals, could be next if they continue to target Palestinians.
And as we mentioned, this comes amid mounting pressure for the Biden administration to try to use its influence to get Israel to scale back its offensive. And I wonder if you think this is going to do it for those who are criticizing Biden.
I think it's one piece of the puzzle. I think it's no accident that this got announced today, just as the president was heading to Michigan, a state with a relatively large Arab American population, a state where we know the Biden administration has tried to sit down with Arab American leaders with mixed success. And so this is definitely meant to send a signal to those voters in that pivotal swing state, but other Arab Americans around the country, that he does care about the plight of the Palestinians, and that this is one more piece of evidence of that. But it's clear that he's got a lot more work to do. The White House announced today that more administration officials will be hitting the road starting in the next few days to sit down, or at least to try to sit down, with Arab American leaders. We know that in some cases, those meetings have been rejected because the leaders and their communities felt so strongly about U.S. support for Israel in this ongoing war.
Yeah, that is going to be some pretty tricky ground for the president to navigate. Of course, many of those Arab Americans are calling for a ceasefire. The administration is concerned, has always been, that this conflict could widen. But we also know, we just heard from Secretary Austin today, that it will defend the U.S. and its troops especially. So what can you tell us about the strikes that have been approved in response to the Jordan drone strike that killed 3 U.S. service members?
So what we know is that a series of strikes have been approved that would take place potentially over several days. We don't know exactly when those strikes would start, but we're told that that they would take place in Iraq and Syria, and that it would be targeting outposts that have links to Iran, basically militias linked to Iran that are believed to be responsible for the attack on the base in Jordan that killed 3 American service members and wounded about 40. Now, the fact that the administration is signposting this, is basically saying, hey, we're going to do this, is typically something that it does when it wants to try to minimize casualties, wants to make sure that those that could be targeted can get out of the way if they need to, because the administration is interested in sending a message. It is not necessarily interested in starting a larger conflict with Iran, like you said. And so they're trying to find this sort of middle ground. It's tricky. What the Secretary of Defense said today is that this is going to be a multi-tiered approach. And so even once you do see these strikes that are supposed to be carried out, that doesn't mean that it's the end of their efforts to retaliate for what was done to these American soldiers.
All right, we will be watching. Thank you so much, Nancy Cortez. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.